Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are going to have a look at the VR pawn. And like I already said in the desktop pawn tutorial, this one will be slightly longer because there's a lot to cover in it. I try to slow down a little bit because it's really important that you understand how to set up your VR pawn. Of course, we already have prepared some examples for you. You can find them in our levels. So I'm going to search for my BP map info. In there I have the level key. And here is our default pawn VR. In this level we have the pawn VR char laser. And it's a child of the BP pawn VR char. So this one here. It's the same with the desktop pawn. So we have again our main parent. So there's the base logic for that. And we have a char for the camera where you only want to fly around or things like that. And then we have one where you have all the movement and character, so a skeletal mesh and all those things here. So I'm going to create a child of this one here. I don't want to use one of our examples here. I want to create a new one from scratch so you can see how to do it. And let's actually search this in the folder view. It's here under Blueprints Pawn VR. We have our BP Pawn VR char, and I'm going to create a child blueprint out of it. Let's call it tutorial. Very creative. And of course, I make sure to use this char here in this level and hit save. So now every time I play in this level here, I will use this char. So let's open it up to see what's going on in there. So here you can add everything what you actually want the chart to look like. So you can add accessoires or sockets or basically everything you want to. There's not anything special there and it's not different from the previous versions. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this one here. What is important is where is it? This one here, the component controls VR. So this is a component we have created, and in there you can define what kind of controls you actually want to use. So if we go to the right side, on the top here, the first thing we select is what controllers we want to use. So for example, we have the motion controller right and left, so our default ones here. If we want, for example, to use the hands, I would select it here. So let's do it here. Select the left and the right hand. So that's fine. So we can already see if we play in VR now, we should have the hands. Let's try this out to make sure that everything is working properly. And you can already see the hands are lying on the floor. Here they are. So this already worked. The next thing here, we have our data assets. Okay, well, we have our hand tracking, but this is part of another tutorial and we don't need to bother with this one here. It's only for the Oculus Quest. And yeah, we will create a tutorial about that one. Here are our data assets. They are very similar to the workflow we used previously to define our controller mapping. But first of all, you can define different data assets for different HMDs. So in here we have an enum with all the different HMDs we support. And of course you can add your own there. I've created a tutorial about that for the previous version. It's still valid for most of the parts. But yeah, here we have a default preset. This one will be used if we are not able to auto detect your headset. But most of the time, well, actually, if everything is set up correct, we will always detect what hardware you are using and also what kind of controllers you are using. So for example, if you're using the Vive, the index controllers, you would actually use this data preset here because the index controllers are different. But I'm going to use the Oculus today. So Unreal will detect this Oculus HMD enum, and therefore I need to work in this preset here. So I can open this up. And the trigger grip and holding grip, they are like in the previous version. So if you want to use the trigger to actually grab something, you just keep it pressed. And the holding grip is basically if you want to switch between a grab or a grab version where you let go of the object as soon as you let go of the grip. So all of this is not different from the previous versions, and this is also not different from the previous versions. What has changed is how we actually assign the key mapping. We still have our right side and our left side, of course. And if we open this up, you can see all the different buttons. That is still the same, like in the previous version. So you can just select, for example, okay, I have the trigger. And what has changed is we now use names there. So you can just drop your own name in there and create a function out of it. And we have a lot of default names. And I'm going to show you how you can actually find them. They are also, of course, in the documentation. But let's do a quick test. So if I copy this ping here, okay, now we have added the ping to our data asset. But one important thing to keep in mind and how all the system work is we will have a separate tutorial about that too. But if we have a look at the hand here, actually all those controllers, they need the motion components. So motion components are just like, you can think of it like a tool. So for example, we have a laser motion component, we have a motion component for movement, one for pinging, one for the radial menu. So if you want to use one of those tools, you need to make sure that the motion controller you are using actually has this tool set. Otherwise, he's not able to do that. So if we look at the hands, for the left hand, we have the grab toolset, the ping, the radial menu, teleport, movement, and laser. So all of them are there. That means I can use all those functionalities with the left hand. But if we look at the right hand, we only currently have the movement, so we can move around. We have the laser, so we can actually select things and teleport like this. And we have the grab. But we don't have the ping tool. So if we hit play now, nothing would work, although we set this here to ping. It tries to ping, but it will not find a motion component that can actually do anything with this ping command. So I'm also going to show you how you can create your own, because that's basically a very simple thing to do, and it's super powerful. So we're going to do this after that. But first of all, let's add a new child component here and call this mcomp ping. The name doesn't really matter here, so that's not important. It's just for organization purposes and to keep everything clear. What is important is that we select our bpmcomp ping, hit compile and save. And now also the right hand has this mcomp, and it can actually do something with this ping command there. So let's try to see if that is working like it should. So now if I hit the trigger button, you can see it is spawning. Currently it's spawning inside the hand. If we want to change that, let's go in there and move the position like there. So it's not colliding with the hand mesh. Now it will spawn in the direction where you actually point. Okay, perfect. So this is how you connect those things with the motion controllers, and also how you add your own motion components to the motion controllers. But first of all, let's go back a little bit. An important part is the movement. So you can see we have this move fluent forward, move fluent backward, move fluent left, right. And on the left side, we have things like turn left fluent, turn right fluent. So all of these are inside of the motion component because it's locomotion. So let's have a quick look at the motion component that is responsible for the movement. It's this one here. And if we open this up and scroll out in the event graph, you can see a big enum here. And if we scroll to that, here is a simple switch on name. And there are all the different things you can put in there. So for example, if we want to turn left step, I can go in there, copy the name. Of course, I can also just write it in there. Let's also use the trigger for it. So if I press the trigger, I want to turn left step, hit save. And now if I hit play and press the trigger on the left side, I should turn to the left in steps. Okay, so one thing you could do to really understand what we have is, if you don't like to read the documentation, you can also just go through the different things here. For example, the ping is super simple because it just has this ping command and then it executes the ping logic. And let's set up our own movement component. So I can show you how to create it and to connect it with the motion controllers. First of all, I'm going to create a child actor of my motion component and call this one here. What do we do? Let's take a screenshot. Okay, so we open it up and we want to create an override for our function input. First of all, if you work with child actors, it's super important. If you override a function, the function from the parent will not execute. And if we open up the parent, let's have a look if there is something in there. Okay, there's nothing in the parent, so that's totally fine. But most of the time, if you have a parent, there might be something that will be executed in the parent first, and you always need it for the children. In that case, make sure to create a call to parent function and connect it. This will not break anything right now, but maybe we are going to add something in the future to the parent component here. And if you do this setup, you make sure that you first execute the logic from the parent, and then you can create your own logic there. So what do we want to do? We want to execute a console command. It is high-res screen. It's called high-res shot, like that. And let's make a switch here. Switch on name. Let's create a new name here and call it screenshot. So if there is a new function input, we search for the name screenshot. And if it is screenshot, we execute the console command. Hit compile and save. So let's add this to our actual data asset of the controller. I'm also going to use the trigger for it. The name was screenshot. So I just put it in here. And now don't forget to add this motion component to the actual controller you are using. So we are using the right hand here. So let's open our hand right. Add a new child actor. Call it mcomp screenshot. Add it here and hit compile. Oh, sorry, I made a small mistake. This here will only execute if I add a multiplier after that. So let's just use one. That's basically my screen resolution. So it's full HD. And now if I press the trigger, you can see the screen freezes and the high-res screenshot was taken. So now we have created a very simple motion component we can add to all our controllers. And if we press, in this case, the trigger, we will create a beautiful screenshot. Okay, let's quickly do a recap here. So let's say for the right controller, I don't want to use the hands anymore. So I changed this to controller left and controller right. And for the right controller, I want to assign the screenshot functionality again. I open the controller. I add a new child component. So now it's on our right controller. And the only thing left to do is we already have the data assets set up correctly. And if I press the trigger, I have this screenshot. So this should already be fine. So let's try it out if it also works with the controller now. So I have my controller, can do something, and if I press the trigger, a screenshot will be taken. So you can really create any motion component you want to have and just add it to the motion controllers. And then you can just assign it to any button you have and you're good to go. So it's a super flexible system this way now. And yeah, that's basically everything you need to do to set up your VR pawn. I know the system might be a little bit complicated, but I'm sure if you just play around with it, try to create your own motion component, assign it to a different button. And once you have done this once, you really understand how this is working, and it's super powerful. So I'm quite excited how you will use the system and what cool motion components you will create. And if you create a cool motion component, it would be really cool if you share it with the community. So thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next tutorial. Bye.